Film emulation. Hey guys, today I'm running you through a film emulation plugin that I was lucky enough to test out. It's called Dehancer. I'm sure some of you heard of it before. It's basically a plugin for DaVinci, Final Cut, Premiere Pro that basically takes your log footage and can push it towards that more film look. They have over 60 different film stocks to choose from, so it's massive. You can take full control over your grain, your halation, your bloom, overscans, everything you can imagine that you get with film. You can pretty much emulate really nicely in this little plugin. I'm no pro colorist, so please take everything with a grain of salt. So yeah, I'm going to walk you through my process and show you how easy it is to use this plugin and be able to get some really great results. Let's jump into DaVinci and I'll run you through it. Let's do it. So here we are in DaVinci Resolve. This is just a shot I did for a tourism commercial I shot for a local region here in Australia. A couple of people in this back room painting with charcoal. It was shot on the FX6 with some cooked paint crows, so very nice vintage sort of vibe. Anyway, so Dehancer have their own node tree setup that they recommend everyone uses. You don't have to use this, but for the purpose of this video, I will run you through their setup. So first of all, let's start with 3 different nodes. The first node will be for noise reduction. Second node will be for your white balance corrections, and your third node will be for contrast. Now, after this node, we're going to add a parallel node, and this is basically where you'll do all your skin keying and power windows and whatnot. Then after that, we're going to do a CST node, which is your color space transform, and then we're going to add another one for Dehancer. And then last but not least, one more for sharpening if you need it. All right, so there we have it. That's basically the standard node tree setup that Dehancer recommends. Now, Dehancer has their own CST. It's got their contrast and white balance tools within the plugin. So for the purpose of this video, I'm going to turn off those nodes, and we'll just start with Dehancer. Obviously, you may need to use a CST node prior to using Dehancer. Sometimes the CST works better with certain cameras and whatnot, but for this, I'm just going to stick with Dehancer. So we'll leave noise reduction to the end because my computer dies as soon as I put noise reduction on, so it's pretty old, but it's time for an upgrade. But yeah, let's chuck on Dehancer, and let's find it here. Let's chuck on that. Straight onto that node. Now, straight off the bat, it's really heavy, and all the settings are kind of on, as you can see on the side here. Everything's enabled. That is my one thing that I kind of wish Dehancer didn't do. It kind of starts you off with a bass, which is, in my opinion, way off. So. But yeah, that's kind of my own little thing. It's not big. It doesn't take too long to correct everything. But anyway, so let's start with our input settings here. Here is your source. So this is where you can choose your camera. I shot this with the Sony FX6 and at ISO 100, which is the native. Now in here, you can do your exposure settings, your white balance settings within here. It is pretty limiting because it's based on a slider. Whereas these 2 nodes over here, you can use your primary wheels to really dial in that look a bit better. I usually would use them, but for this purpose, we'll just stick in Dehancer. So I'm just going to quickly do a couple little changes here and just warm it up ever so slightly and add a little bit of purple tint to that just to correct that a little bit. Yeah, let's go more. Right about there, that's nice. Okay, so down here in your second little tab, we have the film emulation setting. Now, there is over 60 different film emulations you can choose from. So, it's huge, and they all do different things. to the image, as you can see. Kind of pick one that, works well with the footage or that you like the color renditioning of. The Kodak stuff is really nice, and that's what your traditional films are shot on. So most people usually go for those. But for this video, for this clip, I've actually chosen the Kodak Ektar 100. I just really like how it's rendering the blues and the yellows. So I'll stick with that. Next is your film developer tab. Now, this one is usually off because this is based on the film stock. So if you start mucking around with this, you're really going to change how the film stock works. Some people like to add a little bit of color boost. I usually like to add a little color boost, but we're just going to keep that off for there. And just hide that one away. Now, next is your film compression tab. Tonal range is really your only slider that you probably will use most. That's basically your bright and dark bits of your highlight roll off, and your white point, whereabouts your white point sits. I like to sit it about there. It's quite nice. Your expand is basically your black and white points. Usually I don't really have this on. Next is print. Now there's a couple of different settings in here: Fujifilm, Kodak, and Kodak glossy paper. I kind of usually use the bottom two depending on the shot, but for this one, let's go glossy paper. Now it's going to really lower the exposure settings when you put that on, and just here you can raise it back up with your exposure setting to where you'd like it. I think about there's nice, and you can add more contrast, take away contrast. I'll bump up a little bit. Just gotta be careful about, we're really crushing those blacks down there. So you can always turn on this analog range limiter, which usually lifts your shadows a bit. It can help. It's totally dependent on the shot though. It sometimes might not work. And color density, you can really, it's different to saturation. This is how dense the colors are. I kind of like to leave it quite high. So that's your print stock. Now you can change it. That's a bit bluer, or you can add a bit of a warmth thing. But you can, if we put it into 2383 at the moment, we can actually change the target white and make it a bit bluer, a bit warmer. So I actually quite like it on this. It's looking quite nice there. Now let's do the contrast a little bit more. Cool. All right, that's print. Now, color head. This, you can touch this. It's generally off though, and it comes off. But this is where you can go into your midtones and shadows and highlights and your color mix, and you can really play around in there. I kind of leave it off. I don't really need to use too much of that. And if I do, I'll probably use it in my color wheels back in the white balance settings. So I'll turn that off. Film grain. Now, everyone loves some nice film grain. Now, you get a lot of different options in here. 8mm, 16mm, 35mm, 65mm. My favorite, actually, I find myself going to the 65mm at the 50 ISO. I just find it's just enough. It's just subtle enough. It looks really nice without going too overboard. Like, I'll toggle it on and off there. You can see it really coming on there. Now, if we go back to the 35mm at 50, like, it's quite intense. But I mean, if that's the look you're going for, great. I'm just going to leave it back on 60 for the time being. Now, that's film grain, halation. Now, let's put the mask mode on. This is actually really helpful to see where it's sitting. You can really dial that in, and it also depends on where the shot is sitting and what's happening within the shot, especially when he's in front of the light there. Let's find a good spot. Yeah, there's good. So you can turn that on and off. All different types of halation, from pretty extreme stuff, to just your typical, and you can just turn it right down. I like to have it on. It does add a warmth across the whole image, which can look really nice. Next is your bloom. Now, this is basically going to bloom all the highlights in your image, and can create some nice roll-off if you get the settings right. I usually like to use the 35mm setting on Super 35 and just tone it down a bit. Again, totally dependent on the shot. You might like it, you might not like it, but you have some good control there. Next is your film damage. I really don't use this, but it just adds all the dust and the scratches. Film breath you got there. You got your gate weave. You got your overscan. Now, basically what this overscan does is you can turn that on and it adds the typical, film overscan on top. You can get the 1630. Sorry, you can get the Super 16. You can get your 8mm look. And you can do, lots of different things in here. Change the scan size, your exposure, your offsets. You can change all that. You can flip it. You can zoom it, how zoomed in you want it. Yeah, all different offsets, scales, everything. There's loads of different things there. You can turn it on to positive. You can turn it off. You can do horizontal scans. Rounded, you can do everything. Like, there's a lot of different settings in here that you can really, if you're really looking for that typical Super 8 look, you can emulate it in here pretty well, which is pretty good. But I'll turn that off. And here we go with your vignette. Now, everyone loves a good vignette. I usually like to use the vignettes. You can turn on your mask tool to see where it's sitting, which is way over there for some reason. Let's reset that. You can change your exposure, the size of your vignette, and the aspect ratio too. So if you want to like a tighter one or of an oval shape, you can do all that in here. I usually kind of like to keep it like more of a vertical vignette, and then we can obviously. I kind of like to start with the feather off so I can really see where it's sitting. Then I can change my exposure accordingly. I only like to have it really subtle anyway, because I feel like some people go a bit overboard with the vignettes, especially because we've already got a pretty contrasty image here. But it can just help focus in the viewer into the center of the frame, or wherever you want them to look. That's vignette. And then we've got a few other options down here, like monitor. This is your false colors. This can actually come quite in handy for your exposure settings. At the moment, we've got absolutely nothing blowing out. We do have stuff falling off into the shadows, but there's no real detail in there that I really care about too much. But if you are one that loves a lot of details in your shadows, you can obviously use your false colors and you can put a curve on or whatnot and bring those shadows back up without issue. And then you got a couple other things here like output, LUT generator. You can generate a LUT out. You can disable the input transform, so it kind of can basically work on most footage. I haven't actually tested that too much, to be honest. And yeah, that's basically Dehancer. Once you've finished with your grade and you're happy with that, you can also right-click on the image and grab a still. Basically, this will just take your whole grade and put it into your gallery. And then if you want to go to your next clip that you're grading and within the same scene, you can roll over your clip, right-click, apply the grade, and then it's all there, copied over. You may have to do slight exposure adjustments here, but the majority of the grade is done there and there. Looks beautiful, looks nice. There's some really nice grain happening in here, some really good fall off in the highlights, and yeah, really emulates that film look that in my opinion works well. Good thing about Dehancer, cuts down a lot of grading time. So if you're not a pro colorist like myself and maybe don't have the time to color grade for hours on end, and just want to get your footage looking more organic and more towards that film look, highly recommend Dehancer. Check it out. Put a link in the description. Go have a look at their website. There's all different options there. Great little plugin, and we'll be using it for future projects. So that'll about do it today. If you got any questions, put them down in the comments, and I'll get to them when I can. Thanks, guys. Peace.